Hello and thank you so much for joining me today. Today I'm sharing with you an altered alarm clock from Finnabair that I created based on this month's mood board. This month's mood board has lots of very soft, delicate teal and pink colors that is just gorgeous. So I hope that you'll play along and enjoy the process as much as I did. Anyhow, here's to the clock. After deassembling the clock, I went ahead and started assembling some resin bits inside of the clock. Now I built this up quite a bit because I wanted my focal point to really shine through, and seeing the focal point inside the clock is kind of hard, so you want to make sure that you build it up quite a bit. So I'm using a bunch of thicker pieces of resin to build up my focal point. So you'll see I'm using a larger clock base. This is from my stash. I'm not 100% sure where it's from. I kind of think it might be Scrapyard. Shh, don't tell anybody. No, anyways. Then I'm just using some numbers from Prima, and I placed this frame, but then I'm going to go ahead and change my mind about it later because it just doesn't balance correctly. Because what I'm ultimately trying to do is just build something that's stable, that's going to lift my focal point up to where I want it to be and be pretty in the background without taking over the focal point and taking over the focus of the rest of the project. So it needs to be pushed back and be pretty, but not draw too much attention. I hope that makes sense. So I'm using this thicker, older piece of resin. I think it's an old Prima clock. I'm not sure. I don't even think they're on the market anymore. But anything, it's just whatever is in my stash just to build this focal point up and put this resin seashell up at the top. So now I figured out that the frame doesn't work, and I'm going to put the face there. And then I'm going to go ahead and get all my gobs of glue because I was very, very heavy-handed with my heavy body gel here. I'm adding another clock because it's a clock, so I'm trying to add, clock things. So numbers and gears and smaller clocks inside of the clock is the thought process here. I'm adding the moon because the moon and the stars because of night from the clock. So that's the thought process. I guess that doesn't matter too much, but that's where my head was at. Anyhow, I'm adhering this shell and I'm going to go to sleep. I'm going to leave it as it is and I'm going to walk away from it and hope that it stays for the night. I'm going to position the clock on the top so I can kind of see if it's in the right spot. And then I'm going to add a resin piece. And this is actually a resin piece that I made off of an old picture frame that I had. I just created a mold and made it off there. So I don't think this isn't something that you could probably find. But I do know that Prima's circle fits perfectly around this as well. So that's something pretty too, but I didn't have that and this worked just as well. So with a little movie magic, everything is going to get painted with white gesso, and I'm doing that off camera because there's no reason for you to watch me paint it white gesso when you're gonna have to watch me paint it all the same color later. Anyhow, so I actually have another one of these in my stash, I think, but this one actually came from the Art Venture pack, and while I watched Finn's video, I didn't do it. I have this weird thing. I take these classes and I don't like to create the same project because I feel guilty sharing the same project that someone else created because I'm in my own headspace and that's my own crazy neurotic problem. So while I did use this technique that is definitely from Finn, which is using the modeling paste to create some random texture in the background and just being completely messy with it and enjoying the process, I didn't make the clock that I was supposed to make. So, I don't know. That's my own crazy neurotic mess. But I'm just taking my finger and using the modeling paste and just dabbing it around. And it does create amazing texture. And honestly, I wasn't really sure that modeling paste did this. Like, I never used it this way. I had no idea it was this sticky, but I just glued those seashells down and I glued all the numbers down, and it works great. I had no idea. So, lesson learned. But anyhow, moving on from that rant, I'm sorry I'm sidetracked. It's very late and I cannot think straight. I'm going to go ahead and start painting everything with Jade Impasto. This is watered down significantly so I can move it around, and then I do spray some water on top of it to make it get in all the nooks and crannies. Like I said before, this is the background and I don't want it to take over anything or draw too much attention to it, so I'm really trying to keep it monochromatic and keep it with the theme of the mood board. So that's why I'm bringing in the lighter color now, and that's the mint, and I have this watered down as well. And I'm just painting everything Jade and Mint, and this is both impastos from Finnabair. And you can see I'm just working with the water and moving my paint around. So I'm just continuing to play with the paint until I'm happy with the way that it looks. And you can see I'm commingling the paints and everything's getting cross-contaminated, but I'm just trying to get everything kind of a cohesive color, and I want the inside to be darker. That's why it's more Jade with a little bit of mint, and the outside of the clock is more mint. I didn't make you watch that because honestly I just painted the whole thing with primarily mint impasto paint. So here I'm moving on to some metallic pink. I believe this is vintage rose, maybe? I'm not 100% sure, I'm sorry. But just the light pale pink, and I just moved that around with a little bit of water. I'm just trying to add some of the colors from the mood board into the inside of the clock. Now I'm using some Parisian blue, which is a liquid acrylic, and I'm really watered this down, but I just wanted to add a little bit of shadows in. Not too much, and that's why it's watered down so much. And once I dry it, it just kind of adds some shadow in the background without making it too dark. And then because I was like, oh, maybe this is too dark, I'm going to go ahead and add in some white gesso, and I'm just dry brushing that just to kind of bring up back all the elements that's there. But because it's monochromatic and it's in the background, you can't really see it. So I'm just trying to touch a little bit of it so you do see some of it, but not too much. I know this is so contradictory and it doesn't make any sense, and I'm sorry that my mind is a jumbled mess, but I hope that that makes some sense to all those crafters out there. But I'm just continuing to dry brush this, a little bit of white gesso here and there. And when I'm finally happy with it, I'm going to move on to the outside of the clock. So with this, I'm using this Mermaid teal color, and I'm going to water it down significantly. And then I'm going to put it on top of the clock and let it drip down. This is also a technique that I basically picked up from Finn's workshop as well. She was doing this with rust to make it more like a rusty color, and I'm just doing it to add a splash of color because it's not rust colored. But I figured, you know, it is technically the Art Venture clock, so I should probably make it a little bit like that. So hers is rusty and beautiful, and mine is soft and pastel with a little bit of color thrown in. So anyhow, but just a little bit of paint. And then once that's dry, I'm going to continue to move it around, and I'm back to adding a little bit of white gesso. And I'm just dry brushing the front of the clock to pick up all the little details in the frame and the numbers that I've glued on the side. And I do add about 3 coats of this, I think, but I don't do all of them on camera because obviously you understand dry brushing and you don't need to watch me do it 100 million times. But just a little bit of dry brushing, and that's what I'm doing here. I do it all around the clock just to pick up all that texture from the modeling paste. And then when I'm happy with it, I'm going to go ahead and start assembling my pieces. I'm adding some pearls. These are just flat back pearls that I picked up at the craft store, probably for Girl Scouts. And I'm using a bunch of flowers. Now I do have a mix of flowers on my desk, like when I open a package, and I have 1 or 2 left. So I just picked out the pink ones, and that's what I'm playing with here. So some of them are cut from a vine, and some of them are probably not even made anymore, but I just hodgepodge some flowers together, and I'm going to continue to fight with flowers for quite some time. And I do get off camera on this. It was kind of really hard to shoot that, so sorry. But once I'm happy with the floral pattern, I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit of white gesso again on top of my flowers. And that's just to make it a little bit more cohesive in my mind, and just soften them up just a tiny bit. So I'm just continuing to add some white gesso on top of the flowers, and then I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit of glitter off camera, so you're not going to see that. And that butterfly is my focal point inside of the shell, but I do go back and add in a tiny heart locket off camera because I thought it needed a little bit something extra. So after I took the first pictures of it, I changed my mind, and I went back and I pried that butterfly off, and I added Finn's tiny heart locket, which you see in the final pictures. Now I'm going in and adding some art stones, and I'm just using some soft gloss gel, and I'm just mixing the art stones all over, and I'm placing them on top of the flowers and just around the seashells. and anywhere where I think there might be a little bit of something. So I know right now you're totally just watching a paintbrush, like you're not even seeing where it goes. But everything was falling off of here too much when I tried to bend it to show you. So I'm sorry about that. You do see a little bit of my placement here, but you get the idea. I'm just trying to place some art stones randomly around the clock. Just filling in the places that need a little something something. That's what you do with art stones anyways. So that's where I'm at with that. I hope that makes sense. And then that really wraps this clock up. I'm going to add this tiny touch of ribbon and a ribbon on the side. And this honestly was something that I made for a prior project that didn't work out for, but it matched this one. So I just figured it's on my desk. Let's throw it in the mix. And that's really it. So I hope you'll consider giving this video a thumbs up and possibly subscribing. I love to have you as a subscriber. Also, I can't wait to see what you create for this month's mood board, and don't forget to share your projects on Instagram and link them back to the blog. We love seeing your projects, and I can't wait to see what you create, and I hope that I've inspired you in some way. Thanks again. Thank you so much for your time, and thanks for watching, and you have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.